One of Sir Sam Neill's former co-stars has revealed that the screen legend battled pneumonia before his unexpected death yesterday at the age of 78.
He beat cancer. He told the world he was free of it in April. And then, 3 months later, he was gone anyway, in a way his own family says nobody saw coming. But here is the part almost no one is talking about. In one of his final acts on this earth, Sam Neill wasn't fighting for his own life. He was fighting for something else entirely, something he cared about just as much as any film role he ever played. We will get to exactly what that was. First, let's talk about the man the world just lost, and why calling him just the Jurassic Park guy does not even begin to cover it. Sam Neill died on Monday, July 13, 2026, in Sydney, Australia, at the age of 78. His family's statement, posted to his Instagram, used the Maori word whānau, meaning extended family and community, to describe those sharing the news. The loss was sudden and unexpected, the statement read, but blessed by the fact that Sam remained cancer-free. Sam was surrounded by family and passed with the dignity that has characterized his whole life. No cause of death was specified. The family thanked the staff at St. Vincent's Private Hospital for their care. That word, sudden, is the detail nobody quite knows what to do with. Neill had spent years fighting angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma, a rare and aggressive form of blood cancer diagnosed back in 2022. He underwent what he later described as brutal chemotherapy, treatment that stripped him, in his own words, of any kind of dignity. And then in April of this year, he announced something remarkable. Thanks to a genetic therapy that modified his own immune system, he was cancer-free. He beat it. The thing that was supposed to kill him didn't. And 3 months later, something else did, fast enough and unexpectedly enough that even his own family is calling it sudden. To understand why that word carries so much weight, you have to understand how Neill talked about death long before any of this happened. Speaking to the Australian television program Australian Story, back when he first disclosed his diagnosis, he said he was not remotely afraid of dying. He even called the idea of it annoying because, as he put it, he still had things he would like to do. That is not the language of someone bracing for the end. That is the language of someone who assumed he had time. A lot more of it. Now let's talk about who he actually was, because reducing Sam Neill to Dr. Alan Grant does a genuine disservice to one of the most versatile careers in modern film. Most of the world discovered him in 1993, when Steven Spielberg cast him as the reluctant, dinosaur-fearing paleontologist at the center of Jurassic Park, opposite Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. It became one of the highest-grossing films in history and turned Neill into a global name overnight. But by the time that role landed in his lap, Neill had already been working for 2 decades, and he had already proven something that very few actors of his generation managed. He could move seamlessly between the most prestigious art house cinema in the world and the biggest, loudest blockbusters Hollywood could produce, without ever losing credibility in either direction. Just 1 year before Jurassic Park, Neill starred in Jane Campion's The Piano, playing Holly Hunter's husband in a film that would go on to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes and 3 Academy Awards. It is about as far from a dinosaur theme park as cinema gets, emotionally restrained, deeply literary, quietly devastating. Neill made both of those films work, back to back, and that whiplash, from Cannes prestige drama to summer blockbuster phenomenon, became something like his signature move for the next 3 decades. Long before either of those films, Neill had already spent nearly 20 years building a career on the other side of the world, in a New Zealand film industry that, by his own country's account, barely existed when he started. Born in Northern Ireland and raised largely in New Zealand, he began working in television and documentary filmmaking in the 1970s before breaking into features. His early roles in New Zealand and Australian cinema, in films that rarely crossed into American theaters, built the foundation of a reputation for seriousness and range long before Hollywood ever noticed him. By the time international audiences discovered him, he had already spent 2 decades proving himself to audiences an ocean away in an industry with a fraction of the resources and visibility that Hollywood offered. That long, quiet apprenticeship is part of why New Zealand's tributes this week have carried such particular weight. He wasn't simply a New Zealand actor who made it big elsewhere. He was one of the people who helped build the idea that a New Zealand actor could make it big elsewhere at all. He worked twice with Meryl Streep in Fred Scapese's Plenty, and again in A Cry in the Dark, the latter a harrowing dramatization of the real-life case of a baby's death in the Australian outback that became a sensationalized media circus, a role that showcased exactly the kind of restrained, intelligent gravity Neill brought to serious material. He earned an Emmy nomination playing the title role in the 1998 miniseries Merlin. Decades later, an entirely new generation discovered him as a menacing crime boss in Peaky Blinders. In between all of that, he continued turning up in massive franchise fare, action films, thrillers, and prestige television alike, never appearing to favor one register over another. He simply went where the good work was. If you're finding this retrospective as moving as we are, this is a good moment to subscribe. We cover the real stories behind the industry's biggest names every single week, and there is more of Sam Neill's story still to tell. Away from the screen, Neill built a life that had almost nothing to do with fame at all. In 1993, the same year Jurassic Park hit theaters, he founded Two Paddocks, an organic winery in New Zealand's Central Otago region, with what he described as a simple mission: to produce a good Pinot Noir that his friends and family would enjoy. He ran that winery for over 3 decades. He was famously candid about his approach to it, once telling Vulture that his friends would pretty much drink anything, so it hadn't seemed too hard to please them. That same interview revealed one of the more quietly delightful details of his private life. Neill loved naming the animals on his farm after Hollywood friends and icons, and those animals became minor celebrities themselves on his social media pages. He told Vulture, with the kind of dry humor he was known for, that he loved naming as many of his animals as possible after his friends, adding that it doesn't always end well. Meryl Streep, he said, was killed by a ferret recently. I found her as a pile of feathers one day. That is Sam Neill in a single anecdote. Warm, self-deprecating, completely unbothered by his own fame, finding humor in the absurd right up until the very end. And this brings us to the thing almost nobody has mentioned in the flood of tributes this week. In early 2026, just months before his death, Neill released a short documentary opposing a proposed fast-track industrial gold mine planned for New Zealand's Central Otago region, the exact rolling hills where he had built his winery and spent much of his life. This wasn't a passing celebrity endorsement or a signature on a petition. He made an actual film about it, using his platform, his craft, and his remaining time to fight for a landscape he clearly loved more than almost anything else in his life. A man who had just been told his cancer was gone did not spend his newly reclaimed time chasing more roles, more fame, or more money. He made a documentary about protecting a valley. That detail says something the box office numbers and award nominations never could. Tributes poured in from heads of state this week. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon called him one of the greats, noting that Neill started out when there was barely a film industry in New Zealand to speak of, and that for more than 50 years he took New Zealand stories to the world. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese described him as wry and dry, thoughtful and laconic, adding that Neill fought illness with the same dignity, humor, and conviction that gave strength to his every performance. Neill was knighted for his outstanding contribution to film and released his memoir titled Did I Ever Tell You This? Back in March of 2023, in the middle of his cancer treatment. Even the title carries his voice, playful, a little wry, an invitation rather than a declaration. In that same period, discussing his diagnosis publicly for the first time, he described himself as being in a fight for his life and spoke candidly about how little interest he actually had in the disease itself. "It's not interesting to me," he said. "I'm not interested in cancer. I've got other things on my mind, and it's not cancer. I know I've got it, but I'm not really interested in it." That refusal to let illness define his remaining time, to keep his attention fixed on the things he actually cared about, runs directly through to those final months spent making a documentary about a gold mine instead of resting on the achievement of beating cancer at all. He beat the cancer. He told the world it was gone. He spent his final months making a film about protecting a piece of land he loved, not chasing another blockbuster. And then, suddenly, without warning, he was gone. Somewhere in that sequence is the real story of who Sam Neill actually was underneath the dinosaurs and the franchise fame. A serious artist, a devoted environmentalist, a man who named a ferret's victim after Meryl Streep and thought it was funny. Someone who, right up until the very end, was still doing the things he found meaningful, on his own terms. That is the story behind the headlines this week, the parts of Sam Neill's life that the tribute reels tend to leave out. If you want more retrospectives like this one, the next video is already waiting for you. Go watch it now. We will see you there.